Hello, my name is Dan McDuff, and in this little video here I'm going to be showing you how I kind of made the Viewfinder track for our production. So, first of all, this entire track is kind of based off of a track by Vixento, which I did in my inspirations. His track Staring at the Lights, I thought the theme of it very much fit what we were aiming for, and it was a style that I think I would be able to somewhat recreate and then somewhat actually learn something new and get something that we were looking for the track. So the main things that this track is based off of is the second melody of Staring at the Lights and also the drum beat. So if we play that first. So you can hear that. And then if I just come to here, let me just find... I tried to firstly recreate a drum beat that kind of sounded a lot like the drum beat from Staring at the Lights. So then that just loops, and that was basically completely... I tried to line it up as much as possible with Staring at the Lights. And so that was the first thing I made. And then it came onto the melody. So if you listen to the melody here, you got... And then you come to the melody I made. I'll just move this off screen. And can I get this singled out? Nope, that's not what I'm trying to do. Let's try a better synth. So you can hear the resemblance between them, obviously, but I don't want to make an exact recreation of the track, so I did try and change it up a little bit. When I was listening to Staring at the Lights, this separate melody kind of came into my head, and that's where I got the original idea for the track from. But then, I'll go on into this later, but then when I was working on the drop, I thought that it could probably do with a bit more detail, and that's where the tropical side of the track kind of came into things. So, first thing I tried to do was make a drop, so if I just try and take out the correct layers, it'll be this one and this one. So that was kind of the drop thing. So when you stick that with the drums, you get, and a sweeper, you get this. And then I wanted to add to that with a secondary melody, and that secondary melody came from when I was making the beginning. So the beginning sounds a lot like this. And then that melody was just brought over by doing this. So I simply turned that into a pan flute and put it over the original drop, and that was just to add an extra layer and add a bit of depth to the track. And then the next thing I kind of worked on was this over here. I wanted it to have a beginning, I didn't want it to just suddenly start. And so what I did first was I put a band pass on the track, on the drop of the track, which is where you basically take an equalizer and you cut out all the high pitched notes and all the low pitched notes, and then that created this. So that was just there as a little intro piece just before the actual track came in, and obviously that cuts in a little bit too early, so what I have here is just adding a lot of reverb to the very first little bit of that, and then just reversing it so it adds a nice little fade in, like this. And that just means it kind of flows a lot better. You don't have a very abrupt start, which is something that a lot of my music has done in the past, and once again this is something I'm learning to try and change. And so yeah, so I had all of this ready so far, so this is when I moved on to, as you can see, I haven't got, oh, I just realised you can't even see this. That's when I moved on to around about here, and so I'd had the intro part, I'd had the drop part, or the drop, so I needed something in between. So I had a bit more of a dumbed down drum beat. This was just hi-hats and kicks and snares, it wasn't any extra percussion. And then I just added a little bit of a layer, and this envelope here was just to add a bit of volume to some of the layers so that it flowed smoothly, and you get this transition. And if I'm not mistaken, that was actually to add this bit, so the dun, dun, dun. That was to make that kind of flow a lot better. And that is also the first part where the synths for the first melody that was based off of Staring at the Lights came into. So if we keep going along, this then transforms once again. Added some bells along with those to add a little bit of a happier tone, because of course the first part of this trailer is based on a very happy tone, whereas the end part isn't, which is where I had to change things up a little bit. But yeah, as you can see, every time I'm adding volume and frequency automations, so basically what they do is when you're trying to keep something clean and you want a nice transition, you want to make it you don't want to have it abrupt. So that's basically what all of this is doing. It's just making sure this doesn't go abruptly into that. So right now it sounds like this. Oh. If I were to take that away, it would sound like this. Now it's not a particularly noticeable difference, but you do hear it. It just means it is just a lot of a less abrupt change, and this is then, I believe what this is doing here is it's turning the kick into something a lot more high pitch, so you lose the low end of the kick, and what that means is when the drop comes in you haven't got that much bass before it, which makes the drop a lot more heavy hitting, and that is obviously something I'm looking for, because part of this track is we wanted a strong beat to cut to, because that's how many vlogs work. So if we keep going, this is the next bit I made. So the point with this bit is you've got to mix all your how do I do this? You've got to mix all of that with your secondary melody, so which would be this one. And then you've got your chords. And there was no bass in this bit either. Obviously, as I said, I want to make the bass heavy hitting so that the drop is more heavy hitting. So it keeps going through this. Then here, what I did was I added a camera snapper, a camera click, to add that little bit of realistic sound into it. So what I like to do with a lot of my music is I like to add a realistic sound that relates the track to the theme I'm going for. So for example, another track I did called Runway, I used loads of sound from an airport in that one, whereas here I've used a Nikon camera snapper, and in the drop that changes it from being this, which is very dull, doesn't quite sound right, and then when you add in that little camera snap, it just does this. It sounds like it's meant to be there. Obviously when we get to the drop, that's when the bass comes in. So we've got, if I can get this out of the way, we've got just a bass line which follows for the first half the chords, as you can see, if I go between the two layers. And then for the second half, I wanted to add a little bit of variation, because obviously I want to make this track sound more professional than not, as we want this to look as much like a professional production as possible. So obviously that's adding some variation, and that's simply making a higher note towards the end of the bass line. So it goes from this to this. It's a subtle change, but it is there and your ears do pick it up. This is stuff that I've been slowly learning through music since probably about a couple of years ago. Every time I work on music I'm kind of learning new stuff, and this is one of the things that I tried to implement into this track. So if we keep going, we get to the mid drop where I added another camera snapper for the effect. Once again, it's just that effect of having your camera snapper in there. It relates it back to our own production, so it's all about that viewfinder, and this is kind of that viewfinder snap that we're looking for. It's kind of the whole symbolization of the elements of our production. So when you look at the title, you've got the little camera snapper as the title shows, and then you've got this little snapper in the soundtrack, and putting those together makes it feel like this production was made to be stitched together. It doesn't we want to make this seem as professional as possible, and that's something I tried to do to make that seem that way. So then, this is pretty much all I needed for the production, but obviously we might have decided we want to use a bit more or less of the track, and obviously I wanted to make this a full track, so I basically made a second half. So this bit here is exactly the same as this bit here, and then quite simply I just had to add something in the middle. So first, keep it simple after the drop, just some chords, make sure they start low and build back up again. You've got those pianos and pads which add both that real and synthetical style. Now this is something else I quite enjoyed, so that was making two different patterns come together to work together. So here we had the Rhodes that had the Staring at the Lights melody, but once again changed up a bit. So if I solo 11, it just sounds like this. And then I wanted to add that to some guitars. So I'd already used some guitars in the other melody, so I wanted to add them together, see how it sound, and it came out much better than I expected, sounding like this. And then when you add those back together with everything, you get this. Kind of starts again. So that was kind of the building together of all of it. Something I didn't actually go through, I realised, was actually making the chords, and the way that actually kind of worked was I got the... If I can go back to here, I have to keep moving this over because it's stuck on top. I had these Rhodes and stuff, so this one, if I can get to it. I've still got the drum beat back there, let me just solo that out. So I had that, so then where I went from there was to add pianos. So basically that was kind of just a game, so a game of figuring it out. So if you actually come to here, layer 26, let me unmute that. So this was one of the minor layers, so you can't hear it that well, but I could just make another piano layer. I'll do this for ease, it shouldn't take too long. And change the mute here. There you go, I'll mute that one. And basically I just took the melody and I tried to find chords that fit with it. That was as simple as it was, so now it sounds like this. So that all fit together, and then it was simply going from that into having them as full chords. Now, after having done this for a while, making full chords from single line notes isn't too hard in 99% of scenarios. Sometimes there are issues, but that doesn't matter for this. And then it was just adding other elements. So, you know, I needed a bass, so I decided to go with because this track was meant to be a mixture of the tropical style I know how to make and the sort of chill ambient style that I was looking for this track, I added the kind of signature tropical style of the bass, and that's basically where you have this 3-note progression. And so if I then add this on, let me just find the right channel, it then came into this. And that just kept happening, the layers just kept building up, and in the end it kind of came in together to what it is. Now, there's not too much point in me showing you anything else as part of the track, but that's simply the way I worked with this one, was I just layered things until I found things that worked correctly. And then as far as the eerie part at the end goes, I basically muted certain channels so that I only had the bells, and I'm not sure if I've actually got everything muted here, so I'll just check. But it was just here. I wanted from this bit onwards to here, and that kind of came out, hopefully if I've muted everything correctly, to this. No, not everything is muted there, let me just figure out what isn't. That should be muted. Yep. That should be muted. Might help if I was on the right layer. Okay, just 1 second. Don't need that. This should be it. So there was a bit more automation to it because I've gone back to this project being just the actual track. You can't hear too much of that here, but it was simply, what I did here was to make it sound just that little bit more eerie. I kind of had all the bell layers in different positions, so you've got these ones here, but if you see when I move between them, just they all move around a little bit, and that kind of gives it that echoey sound you hear here. I mute the bells to make that a bit easier to hear. You get this. And once again, that was just to add that little bit of ambience and eerie feeling, and I think that worked quite well. And that's how I made the ending. The last thing I need to do now for the final bit of the track is just add a cinematic drone. I don't know how to do that, so I'm pretty much just basing what I'm learning off of a YouTube tutorial, and hopefully for the final cut that should be done.